Welcome, everybody. I guess Elachayim. This is really filled with alcohol. Just, I don't want anyone to think I have a drinking problem. So
Looks like white lightning.
there you go, moonshine. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, or just gentlemen, we've arrived at the chapter about whom the entire book has been written. Keeping in mind that the book is titled The Book of the Intermediate Man, Sefer Shel Beinoni. So if you remember, we started off explaining what a Beinoni is not. He's not a person with 50% sins and 50% merits, because we said if a guy does even one sin, he's wicked. He sinned. He did something wrong. You're a criminal. The measure of punishment, or the measure of the criminal act that has to do with punishment, rectification, and cleansing. But the fact of the matter is, a person is a rasha. He violated God's will. I mean, it's over. And a tzaddik is a person, we said, it doesn't have any impulse at all to sin, to do anything against God's will. Why? Because he doesn't have Yetzer Hara. And the only difference between one tzaddik and another tzaddik is in his attitude towards the material world. But we ended off chapter 11 saying that we're talking about levels that are way beyond us. It's almost like that it's there, but going back to the Beinoni, the really important chapters. Sorry, not for me to say which chapter is important, not important. I mean, the chapters really pertaining to Beinoni is you have a godly soul, and that godly soul has 10 character traits: 3 intellectual, 7 emotional, Chacham and Bin Adas, Chabad, and you have Chesed and Gevura and Tiferes. And then you have the animal soul, as Alter Rebbe called it. And the animal soul also has 10 faculties. And each one of these souls only have the one method of expression, which is thought, speech, and action. So inside of you, you can have 2 consciousness, but you can only express yourself in one way. And here's where the fight is. The fight is between the godly soul and the animal soul. The godly soul wants to express itself in a godly way. Learn Torah, pray, do mitzvahs. The animal soul wants to do things that it finds pleasurable. And by the way, we're not talking about sinning over here, because we're not talking about a rasha. Right? A rasha is someone who violates God's will. We're talking about somebody who eats kosher food, kosher cake, kosher potato chips, kosher ice cream, but he's not doing it necessarily for a godly purpose. And you might argue, okay, what's so bad with that? So Chassidus explains that the way the Yetzer Hara works, because what does the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, want? It wants to have the person under its dominion. I say something, I want something, you do it. Where's the resistance coming from? The godly soul. So what the Yetzer Hara, or the animal soul, tries to do is it tries to numb the voice, to deafen the voice of the godly soul, and it tries to cause muscular atrophy. What's it called? When the muscles die?
Yeah, atrophy.
Yeah, muscular atrophy of the
godly. It gets very weakened.
Of the godly soul. The godly soul and the evil inclination and the good inclination, they're not exactly the same, but usually they're interchangeable. Are muscles. That's exactly what they are. You don't use them, they die. And when you try to use them, all of a sudden, it's hard. So what does an animal soul try to do? He knows if he goes to a Jew and says off the bat, eat chazer. You're not gonna eat chazer. What are you talking about? A Jew doesn't eat chazer. What are you talking about? Get out of here. But if the Yetzer Hara trains, or use a modern term, grooms, that eat potato chips, eat another regular, eat have another cake, and eat another, have some more ice cream, and do more. Meaning everything you find pleasurable, do. And what's the big deal? Okay. But what it's doing is it's training the person that anytime I want, I get. And then eventually, when it comes to the thing that's forbidden, the person has no willpower to say no. That's I once read how do they get these? I mean, this is a very vulgar example, but I don't know why not to mad. You have these women who are in these houses of ill repute. How come they don't run away? So I once read something. What do they? They kidnap these girls, and they inject them with drugs. And they're so addicted to the drug that although they know they're getting violated, but they need that fix. So they come back because they have no willpower to say no. So you're thinking, although it's self-destructive and it's harmful, yada yada, but they have no willpower. So what the Yetzer Hara wants to do is make you an addict. If I asked you of a definition of an addict, what's the answer?
A person who has to have something, even though it's bad for them, they've got to have it.
You're addicted.
And
Addict means you have no power to say no.
power to say no.
You're a slave to whatever
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. That's what the Yetzer Hara wants. So I'll share with you how the previous Rebbe says that his father taught him that if, let's say, it's holy, right? I'm going to learn. So the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe's father, said, no, that's the Yetzer Hara. Because he's trying to stop you from doing the right thing. And sometimes the Yetzer Hara will put on a hat and a jacket, so to speak, and payas and a talis, because he's a very smart guy. If he comes to you looking like a bum, he says, but he'll come to you looking like a rabbi, so to speak. Inside the rabbi, inside of you, say, no, maybe now I'll learn. And the previous Rebbe said, I never knew there could be a religious Yetzer Hara or a Hasidic Yetzer Hara. It was a revelation. So anytime you have a stirring inside of you to do something, this Alter Rebbe is going to focus on in chapter 12 and 13. You got to ask yourself, where is this motivation coming from? What's the purpose of this motivation? Is it really the right thing to do? Just ask yourself. Just stop. Instead of doing it right away, just ask yourself that question. It's a very, very powerful question. And Alter Rebbe is going to say, not in these exact words, but to paraphrase, he's going to say, if you ask yourself the question, doing the right decision becomes, the moment you think it through. We're not talking about investing in a stock and you think, okay, I should invest. What's going to happen? And afterwards, you didn't know that stock wasn't a stupid decision. You want to call it unlucky, right? Decision. Right? Stupid decisions or bad decisions are usually because we don't think. The moment you think, or I once read something that anytime a guy has an impulse, I forgot who wrote this. Anytime a guy has an impulse to buy something, he says, I'll buy it tomorrow. If I still want it tomorrow, I'll buy it.
That's me with Amazon. I put it into my list and I wait.
Well, I don't even put it into my list.
My kids don't have that concept. My kids, right? I should give my Amazon driver Hanukkah gelt. He's at my house so often. Okay, let's learn the introduction. So in the previous chapters, the Alter Rebbe defined the term tzaddik and Russia. Tzaddik, he explains one whose good qualities. So basically, we spoke about this. All right, here we go. Now let's get to the text, okay? Beinoni, and the intermediate man, the Beinoni. You want me to get you a book, Ron? So if you want a book, it's in the top shelf on the right. If you want to listen, you can listen.
Yeah, listen.
Okay, the Beinoni who shel olam ein hara, for never does the evil gaver overpower kol kach so much lichwish is iktana. In chapter 11, 10 and 11, we learned that a tzaddik has no evil impulse. Oh, sorry. In chapter 10, sorry, we learned that the tzaddik has no evil impulse. In chapter 11, we learned the Russia has an evil impulse and a good impulse, but the good impulse never gets listened to. It's there, but doesn't get listened to. The Beinoni has both, but he never listens to the evil impulse. So the desire, the drive is there. The cake is good. Whatever it is that indulgent is good. And the moment he thinks, and actually in chapter, I think 23, 24, I think, Alter Rebbe is going to address the guy who's trying very hard to be a good guy and can't understand, why do I still want to eat a piece of chocolate cake? Or why does spending time on Instagram, wasting time on Instagram still call to me? Alter Rebbe says, why not? You have a Yitzhar, don't you? Is chocolate cake not good? It's good. Well, Jackie Mason has the great joke about potato chips and alfalfa. So people tell you about alfalfa, you have to develop a taste. So what are you talking about? Anyone ever tell you have to develop a taste for potato chips? No, why? It's good. Right? Had to develop a taste for my sister-in-law. She's in the family. Right? So the Beinoni, this is why he's the true hero of Tanya. This is why he's the real hero, because he is a person that has a desire to do something that's not godly or productive, but he never gives in. Could you imagine if I said, if a guy's on a diet, and I think of Weight Watchers, they have something. You have a cheat day or a cheat something, right? Give yourself a cheat, because you can't be perfect all the time. You have to let that urge, otherwise it'll come out. It won't just be a rugula.
It'll be uncontrolled.
Uncontrolled, or it could be 2 slices of bread. 2 slices of bread and all.
2 slices of bread, but they're 6 feet long.
Exactly.
Not a foot long, so 6 foot.
Right, exactly. But the Alter Rebbe said, no, that's not true. A person has the ability to never give in. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain in chapter 12 something very interesting. You know what our problem is? We look at our day as one complete unit. It's not. Our day is not one complete unit. Our day is made up of different experiences throughout every minute. An hour is 60 different experiences every minute. So I'll tell you a story, and this is a story we're going to repeat because it's a very powerful story. No, Nissen. Nissen is the father. Nissen Eminov. The previous Rebbe told him to go to France. Well, he was in France, to stay in France, to run the yeshiva. He was very upset because the previous Rebbe went to America and he wanted to be next to the Rebbe.
Mm-hmm.
This Rebbe, not that he doesn't say anything wrong, but so the Rabbi Nevinov is his uncle. I forget exactly how. It's his uncle. So he would stay in the Denberg's house. So they had so one time, I heard the story straight from Yossi Denberg myself, and Tanya. To do anything wrong in the next 30 seconds? Yeah. Sit on his head. Now, you think it's possible for you to do not to say anything wrong for the next 30 seconds? Yeah. Do you think it's possible for you not to think anything? Yeah. Congratulations, you're a Beinoni. Because that's what it is. A Beinoni, it's not 24 hours. It's these 30 seconds, and then the next 30 seconds, and the next 30 seconds. It's a constant battle, those 30 seconds. But can I ask you a question? Do you think it's possible not to speak Lashon Hara for the next 30 seconds?
Speak it, sure. Okay.
Right?
Think it. Well,
Right, but I'm saying, but think about it, right? Is it possible not
That's the next question.
Yeah, that's the next question.
Right, say, is it possible not to sin for the next 30 seconds? I think if you go to somebody, can not sin for the next 30 seconds? Yeah.
Okay.
That's a Beinoni. He never allows the evil inside of him to find expression. By slavish, beguf lachtiyai, to clothe itself in his body to make him sin. Because the soul is a power. It's a consciousness. The thought, speech, and action is the vessel. The Hainu 170 in the old print. The Hainu shleishes levushi nefesh bahamas. The three garments of the animal soul. She'em achshava dibur maisa, which are the thought, speech, and action. Mitzad klipa, which are on the side of klipa. Engraved in boyel nefesh of the kisla sabash v'gof. Do not overpower the godly soul to vest itself in the body. B'mayach, in his mind, in thought, uvepeh, in his mouth and speech, v'shar ramach evadim, and other limbs which represent the action, lachtiyam, to make him sin, ulatamam, or to defile them, chas v'shalom. So they're present, but he never allows them to be expression. So Alter Rebbe is going to give the example very soon of a court. A court in Jewish law, what's the minimum size court in Jewish law?
120?
No, it's a maximum. No, actually, the maximum 70. The minimum is 3. When you go to court, with another Jew, there's 3 rabbis there. Actually, the Pirkei Avos says no one should be a singular judge, because there's only one single judge, unless the guy's an expert and you're going to ask him a question, and he's the expert, but a Rav. But are you going to ask him a question? You have a dispute in something, but usually when it comes to especially civil matters. So let's say you have a case. So one rabbi gives his opinion, another rabbi who gives his opinion, differing opinions. Who decides what the law is? The third rabbi. So the one rabbi gave his opinion, but you don't listen to him. The opinion stated, but you don't listen to him. This is what the Alter Rebbe is going to say happens. Is supposed to happen. The Yetzer Hara gives his opinion. Yetzer Tov gives his opinion, and you have to decide which rabbi you're going to side with, which opinion you're going to side with. That's entirely up to you. So it's not like the nefesh bahamas, the animal soul, doesn't give his opinion. I hear your opinion. I'm just not listening to you. As we say, rak shleishel levushay nefesh alakis, only three garments of the godly soul. They're the only ones that find expression in the body. Which are the thought, speech, and action. 613 mitzvahs to the Torah. Now that Alter is going to say something crazy. And he never transgressed. And he will never transgress. And he's never been a Rasha. So now comes that question, what do you mean? That means if I did a sin, I can never be a Beinoni? All right, close it. It doesn't apply to me. It only applies to someone perfect. But, one second, but a lot of things in this book don't make any sense. Because in chapter 1, we learned that if a guy does a sin, one of the questions Alter Rebbe asking what a Beinoni is, we said, if a guy does a sin, he's a Rasha. And if he does teshuvah, he's a tzaddik again. So how can he be a Beinoni? So here you're saying you don't do a sin, you can never sin. So let's say you sinned, you can never be a Beinoni again. I mean, so we'll read it inside. But what Alter Rebbe is going to say, a Beinoni is a character person, and where he's standing now, he can never sin. Doesn't mean he lacks the physical capacity, but because he's constantly in a state of not listening to his animal self, he'll never sin. Now, can he change? Yeah, he can change. But where he is now, he'll never sin. And looking at him now, you can't imagine him sinning because of who he is. I think I've told the story before. When we spoke about hiskafia, remember we spoke about hiskafia, self-control? We spoke about this two concepts of iskafia, self-control, and isapcha, and total transformation. So a Beinoni always has hiskafia. A Beinoni always has self-control. Always, iskafia means to hold back, to subdue. Yes, I hear you, that you want, but no, I'm not going to. He's in a constant state of iskafia. A tzaddik is hisapchi, transforms it. We're going to learn, we're way jumping ahead over here. But a Beinoni can't transform the chocolate cake into service of God. Chocolate cake is indulgent. Because chocolate tastes good to the Beinoni. The tzaddik doesn't taste the chocolate. To him, the chocolate cake is a total service in the act of God. That's transformation. The Beinoni has to totally be a state of subdual, self-control. Unless it's Shabbos, but again, we're getting off the subject. Anyway, we're jumping ahead. I mean, we're going to get to it, but not yet. The Alter Rebbe works in a very structured way. I don't want to ruin it. Then it confuses. The reason why he wrote the book, not anyone else. So, I've told the story before. I don't know if this class, the previous Rebbe would smoke a lot. And remember, the previous Rebbe was born in 1880, passed away in 1950. So in the early 1900s, everyone smoked. Came out of study in the 40s. Smoking is bad for you. It's like a doctor comes to visit the previous Rebbe and says, a new study came out. Smoking is bad for you. Previous Rebbe was like, okay, I don't smoke. And he smoked like some crazy number. I mean, a crazy number. In fact, a lot of pictures of that previous Rebbe smoking. In the picture, he's sitting there, I think I had that with the pipe, or what do they call the stick in the
Cigarette holder.
Cigarette holder. Yeah, very fancy. Because you don't want to get your fingers stained, right? Or smelled. Right? So that
tobacco.
Yeah. So the previous Rebbe said, "Okay, I don't smoke." So the doctor said, "What do you mean you don't smoke? Everyone knows you smoke like a few packs a day, not a couple, few." So he said, "No, the person who didn't know smoking was bad for you used to smoke. Now this person doesn't smoke." That's a Beinoni. Once the previous Rebbe was told, the previous Rebbe was the tzaddik, not a Beinoni. But I was giving an example of once this person reaches the level of he will never allow the evil inclination, the animal soul, to overpower him. Not only he doesn't, you can't imagine it happening. Because the status that he is. And I once heard from a historian, the stories they tell about Richard Nixon are not the same stories you hear about Chafetz Chaim. If I told you a story that Chafetz Chaim went to a baseball game, you'd say it's not true. It can be, because such a person doesn't go to a baseball game. Right? Because the character of the person, it can be. Does this make sense?
No. What's wrong with going to a baseball game?
A lot of things are wrong with going to a baseball game. The Chafetz Chaim is a great tzaddik. You wouldn't waste his time going to a baseball game.
Waste his time, that's a different story. Okay.
Now, is going to a baseball game better than going to a club? Yeah. But let's call a spade a spade. Going to a baseball game is a waste of time. That's what it is. The Torah has 1,000,001 things you could do better than going to a baseball game. I'm not saying I've never gone to a game, but one of the messages you got to learn Tanya. We're going to get into the 19, 20, 21. You got to be honest with yourself. Right? If I told you the Rebbe went to a baseball game, is it believable? No. It's not.
Okay.
It's just not, right? The Rebbe, the Chafetz Chaim, these people spend their days learning Torah and I'm saying is, so when a person reaches a certain level of character, you can't imagine it happening. Let's read it inside. Because a lot of these notes, by the way, yes, they're in English, but these notes were authored by the Rebbe. Because this book that we're learning is a transcript of the Tanya classes that were given on the radio in the 40s. So before the guy gave the class, Rabbi Weinberg, see if we see over here, elucidated by Rabbi Yosef Weinberg, translated by his son Levi and Shalom. Yosef Weinberg is the one that gave the classes on Tanya in the 40s on the radio. The Rebbe wanted it to be done right. So before the class, you would submit what he was going to say on the radio, and the Rebbe would edit. So these edits are from the Rebbe himself. So the Rebbe notes. The question is well known. With regard to the statement, the Beinoni is one who was never transgressed. The following question is raised. Is it not possible through repentance and subsequent divine service that one attained to random Beinoni despite the previous sins? So if I sinned, can't I become Beinoni? After repenting, one could even rise to the level of tzaddik. Like what the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 1, right? There are some people who sinned and became a tzaddik. Look at Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish is Rabbi Yechon's study partner. He was a bandit. And he became Rabbi Yechon's partner and became the famous tzaddik. He's mentioned in the Mishnah and Gemara hundreds of times. The Rebbe answers like this. When the Alter Rebbe states that the Beinoni has never transgressed, it does not mean the Beinoni never sinned in his life as a human being. But in his life as a Beinoni, he has no history of sin. The Beinoni's present spiritual state is such that sin in the past or in the future has no place in his life. He would not sin even if he were the subject of the same temptations and trials, which led him to sin, because now he's a different person. In his present state, he never sinned. Likewise, Alter Rebbe's statement that Beinoni will never sin is to be understood in the same vein. The intention is not that it is impossible for him to sin, because we all have free choice. By the way, even a tzaddik can sin. He has free choice. He never will, because why would you drink ammonia? Yeah, you could. Right? But it doesn't make it a good idea. Yeah, exactly. So he does not, after all, lose his freedom of choice. Rather, explained above, his present state precludes him from sinning in the future. To be classified as the true Beinoni, one must fulfill these conditions. For if one's spiritual state precludes the sinning only under present conditions, but he were to succumb to the temptations in the past, then potentially he's a Rasha. What's a Rasha? A Rasha is a person who is under the control of his Yetzer Hara. So let's say a Rasha is davening. Right now he has a feeling of holiness. Is he a Beinoni? No. No. He's a Rasha who right now is excluded from sinning. But what does the Beinoni mean? Beinoni means he's not under the rule of his Yetzer Hara. If a person's under the rule of his Yetzer Hara, then he's a Rasha. In the same vein, the Alter Rebbe concludes this name Rasha, referring to the one who sins in thought, speech, and action, has never in the state applied to him, however temporarily. For the Beinoni has reached a state which sin is precluded under any circumstances, past or future. It remains to be understood, however, why such a lofty person is a Beinoni. Why isn't he a tzaddik? You guys thought of that question? If a guy reaches a state where he will never sin, and he can't imagine him having sinned in the past. Like him, this guy, Yossi, really? What? No way. Can't imagine. Yossi's just a perfect guy. How can you imagine him? So that's the case. Isn't that a tzaddik? Isn't a tzaddik the guy who doesn't sin and never will sin? What's the difference? So to answer this question, the Rebbe is going to say now, the tzaddik and the Beinoni on the outside look exactly the same. They're both 100% observant and thought, speech, and action, and you look at them and you can't imagine them sinning because they're perfect. They're the holiest guys. And by the way, this opens up a side window. Not really a side, actually. This is what the Alter Rebbe actually raised in chapter 1. If you remember Rabbah, remember Rabbah who said, I'm a Beinoni? And the Alter Rebbe quoted his nephew Abaye, who said, "One second, you're a Beinoni. What are we?" And Rabbah, how did Rabbah die? Remember the story? The Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, had to trick him, and that the Romans were coming, and it was the whole thing because the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, had no control over him because he didn't stop learning Torah even for one moment, and because he was totally enveloped in holiness, the angel of death, which represents impurity, couldn't touch him. But the question is, how does the Rabbah make a mistake? He's a Beinoni. For the same reason that some people are a Beinoni, make a mistake and think they're a tzaddik. Because on the outside, a Beinoni and a tzaddik look exactly the same. They're totally observant and holy. The question is inside. What's going on inside? The difference between a tzaddik and a Beinoni, Alter Rebbe was going to say, the tzaddik inside, there's nothing rotten. It's pure through and through. Godliness. The Beinoni is rotten inside. Chocolate is good. The woman's attractive. Instagram or whatever it is, it's fun. Tzaddik doesn't have that. That's the difference. That's why we all need a mentor, because you can think you're something. And there have been great people in history who thought they were a tzaddik and they weren't. And unfortunately, they were way too confident in themselves, and they fell. Like you had the story of Yechanan Kohen Gadol. Yechanan was a Kohen Gadol who thought he was a tzaddik. Wasn't. What happened? At the end of his life, he became a heretic, because he was he thought too much of himself as tzaddik. It's very, very important to keep yourself in line. To know exactly where you stand. In both sides. So, it's interesting that the Ark of the Covenant it's a box, but it's actually 3 boxes. Gold, wood, and gold. Because it says we're going to learn this in Yisrael Mishpatim 3 weeks. 3 Shabbos. I think it's February 17th. That because it says you should make a wood box and it should be gold inside and outside. So Bezalel understood that God didn't say overlay the wood box with gold. He said it should be covered. So he figured out this is what God wanted: a gold box in the middle of the wood box, and then you should have a gold box. What's the significance? A lot of people on the outside, I forgot who writes this. I'm not sure it's the Rebbe or someone else. I once read this idea on the Parsha. Make sure in a few weeks forget it. I might have to reuse it. So a lot of people on the outside are gold, right? Totally perfect, shining. But they look inside, and they see wood. What's wood? Wood rots. Gold's forever. They say on the outside it could be beautiful, but inside I'm disgusting. I'm rotten. But the Rebbe said, or Chassidus, I forgot who says it, says so you gotta go a little deeper. Your Jewish neshama is gold. You can't. The difference between the tzaddik and the Beinoni is the tzaddik is gold. Gold. The Beinoni is gold and wood. He is rotten inside of him, and he has to be very careful, because that rot can become moldy and spread at any given moment. He always has to be vigilant. Or like one American general said, the terrorists have to be right once. We have to be right every single time. Mm-hmm. Right? But the Beinoni is like is the Department of Defense or National Security. It has to be right 100% of the time. It has to be vigilant always. Because if he lets down his guard once, terrorist attack. The rot comes through. This is what I was going to say. Are you guys good? Should we stop? I see you guys are getting a little droopy. Should we continue? See
so I'm going to confess I'm very tired. It's been a very long day.
Okay, so let's
find a stopping spot that's appropriate.
Over here. So we'll pick up from the answer next class. We're holding at the 20th of Tavis, 172. We'll continue with the answer inside next time, and after I was going to get into the fundamental principle of the whole Tanya. The mind rules over the heart, which is something you got to learn next time.
Tomorrow, 6:30.